Hey everyone, I'm Kendrick Diaz, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Do you remember what comes next? Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Those are some of the opening words of Genesis, which are part of a broader narrative to show how our world started. At one point in history, the earth was swaddled in a blanket of darkness until God, by sovereign decree, streamed forth light. This was the first of several executive actions God took to bring order to the universe and prepare the earth for mankind. But it was also highly symbolic. Our God is a God of light. Dispelling darkness isn't just something he did once, a long time ago. It's something he still does. What do I mean by that? In 2 Corinthians 4 verse 6, Paul draws a parallel between the physical light God beamed into the creation and the spiritual light God beamed into our lives. Listen to this. "For it is the God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ." The Net Bible says, "the light of the glorious knowledge of God." Prior to God's intervention, our hearts were spiritually in the same condition as the earth in Genesis 1:2, covered in darkness, which is another way of saying a couple of things. First, our understanding of spiritual things was severely limited. We were ignorant of our purpose, ignorant of who God truly is, the size and scope of his wonderful plan, ignorant of what is right and wrong. And beyond ignorance, we were entangled in sin. Cut off from God, with no future beyond this physical life, essentially left to stumble in the dark. But that all changed when God shed his light on us. That is, he opened our minds to comprehend some things. For Paul, that was a very literal experience. Before his conversion, he actively persecuted the disciples of Jesus Christ, fully convinced that he was serving God. He rejected Jesus as the prophesied Messiah. He thought that the very idea was blasphemous. But what happened to Paul when he was on his way to Damascus? You probably know the story. What did he experience? Blinding light, brighter than the sun. In that moment, God began the process of removing the veil over his mind. Now, that experience was unique, no doubt. Nothing quite like that has happened since. But in a spiritual sense, what happened outwardly to Paul happens inwardly to everyone whom God calls. So it wasn't just him. It's you and me and anyone else who hears and accepts the gospel message. God dispels the darkness that clouds our minds and opens our eyes to spiritual realities. Now, the darkness comes from Satan the devil, as Paul brings out earlier in this chapter. He blinds the minds of unbelievers so that they can't comprehend the truth. But when God chose to reveal his truth to us, no force, not even Satan himself, could stand in the way. What an honor, what a privilege to have our minds enlightened. But here's the question. Do we live like people who have escaped the darkness and now walk in the light of God? Look at the world. Yes, people are in control of their actions. I don't want to minimize that. Everyone will be held accountable for the things they choose to do. But ultimately, those people are ignorant. A lot of them just don't know any better. But we do. We know better because God, by his decree, enabled us to understand. We know the difference between righteousness and sin. We know the way of life that produces blessings. We know that God sent his son to die in our place so we can have a future in his eternal family. And with all that knowledge comes responsibility. That light hasn't yet dawned on the vast majority of the 8 billion people on this planet, but it has dawned on us, and we can't take that lightly. Listen to what Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9. "But you," and he's talking to converted Christians, "but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light."
Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.